Pretty good. No issues.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, it was a tough Wings game, especially when they go out west like once a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's since they only do come out west once a year, I kind of want to go to those games, but when they suck so badly on the road,
I know.
it's not always
I
fun.
know.
So,
I know. Let's see. I do not have a drink, and I know it's very early there, so I'm guessing you don't either. Let's see. I think our sound is okay. It's cold and bright here. Do you think you're ready?
I think I'm ready.
Awesome. This is going to be great. Hello, welcome to Hard Compound, an American take on Formula One, and welcome to our first annual Formula One awards show, the Effies, the most beloved honor in all of racing. The recipients earning the people's fame and ovation forever, as they say. Patrick, let's get to it.
Sounds good.
2021 was a season for the ages and still controversial ending. So, let's roll out our first award. Most Improved. Who do you select for Most Improved Driver of 2021?
Yeah, so I think this is a good category. We had plenty of nominations in here. I'd like to point out a few different guys that I thought did a really good job of improving overall and against their teammates this season. So, for starters, maybe one that people wouldn't think of right away. I have Nicholas Latifi nominated for this award. George Russell is kind of that what everybody believes is the future great driver in F1. And, in that Williams, not a great car, not a great team. But I thought Latifi throughout the season ended up really improving his overall ability. Near the end of the season, he was, competing with Russell pretty consistently. I thought he did a really good job. So he's up there in my nominations. And then a few others, pretty obvious to see. Carlos Sainz did a great job this season. Max Verstappen, he was incredible this season, but obviously he improved so much to be where he was. And then I have Lando Norris. So those are my nominations.
Well, who you choose?
Yes, of those guys, I have Lando Norris as the most improved driver. I thought he was exceptional to start the season with that McLaren. He outraced Daniel Ricciardo for pretty much the entire season. I thought he was great this whole season. So I have him as my most improved driver.
Yeah, I have to agree with that one. He really stepped it up. He outshone his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. I think he was sixth in the points. I'm not sure, but yeah, he definitely stepped it up. He almost won a race, and I can't think of anyone who was more improved than Lando Norris. So I think that's a great one. Now, our second Formula One Effie Award, biggest impact on Formula One in 2021. I'll take this. I mean, you could say it's Max Verstappen. I think a lot of the folks angry with the final result of the final lap of the final race might say Michael Masi. Zach Brown is having a huge impact. Lewis Hamilton continues to have a huge impact, not only in the sport, but in some of his activism. But for me, I think biggest impact in Formula One in 2021 was Netflix Drive to Survive. I enjoy the show. I'm looking forward to season 4. But you and I, longtime Formula One fans, for us, it's a fun show. We get a little bit of an insight into how things are going inside the garages, sometimes getting a little bit of personal information on the different drivers. But I just see so much growth in the popularity of Formula One, especially in the US, that's directly attributed to Drive to Survive. It's just had a huge impact. So I think biggest impact winner this year goes to Netflix Drive to Survive.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Just reaching a significantly wider audience than the sport itself could, makes a really big difference. So that's a good one for sure.
So, why don't you give us best call of the year? This one is tricky. Best call of the year.
Yeah, this one's tricky. So, kind of like the idea is to give the strategists a little bit of credit here. So, it's hard to remember all the things that happen and all the good and bad calls that happen throughout the year. But, there are a couple that stick out to me. And I would say that the Mercedes team and their strategists, for me, are probably the best in the sport. I think maybe it might be a little bit easier on them because they have Lewis Hamilton and the best car on the grid. But still, they seem to always do the right thing. So I have a couple nominations for this. We'll see if we kind of can remember them. But one of them for me was actually the engine replacement for Lewis Hamilton in Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
He got dinged way down, obviously, had to start from the back of the grid in the sprint there, and then started down in like 10th or 15th, something like that, in the actual race. But he was so much faster than everybody else because of that decision just to change there. They knew they had a winning strategy for that. I thought that was a brilliant call, and it got him right back into the championship race. Then my other nomination is another Mercedes Lewis Hamilton combo strategy. They pit Lewis Hamilton late in the race in Spain. He was then like 20-ish seconds behind Max Verstappen for the lead of the race pretty late on, and he was just crazy fast on his new set of tires. Max couldn't keep pace. Lewis blew past him in the last few laps of the race to go on and win. It was a gutsy call, but really, really brilliant. And so my winner is going to be that engine replacement, though. It was later on in the season. It got Hamilton back in that championship race. It was just a really smart decision to take that penalty when they did.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think, I hadn't really considered that to be nominated for that award, but actually I think that is now the most obvious call. And it almost got Lewis that 8th championship, because up until then, you're right. I mean, Max really had him. And then once they had that engine replacement, Red Bull pretty much had no answer for that. If Max hadn't been just driving a season for the ages, it would have been all she wrote. So that is a good one. So I'm going to do the next one. Most with the least. We sort of came up with this category because it's so easy to, think of the top team, the top driver, the top track. But we want to give some love to some of the folks maybe in the back of the pack. Most with the least. I mean, there's Williams, although I think now with all this new private equity money flowing into them, we should have expected them to do better. Haas, which is just really running that operation, bare bones. I don't even know how they're keeping a car on track. And they pretty much abandoned development of the car this year. I think I would look at those two teams more than anything else. However, I think most with the least, and this might be controversial because it may impact another award later in the show. I think most with the least, I'm going to give to Schumacher. His first season driving in a pretty awful car. On most weekends, he had solid qualifying, solid race. He showed that he belongs on the grid. He almost always stayed positive, said only positive things about the team and the car. And, that's got to be tough. I mean, what a miracle it is to be fortunate enough to be one of the 20 drivers in F1, even with the name Schumacher. And he was just in such an awful car, and I think did as much as he could with that car. And when you compare him to his teammate Mazepin, he's certainly outshone him. So for me, most with the least goes to Schumacher. I keep wanting to say Michael Schumacher, but I won't. So I'll just say Schumacher because he's sort of, that's who's on the grid right now.
Nice. Yeah, I like that one. I hope he gets to be in a little bit better car next year and really show what he can do.
Yeah, and then maybe after that, jump out of Haas into something that helps him at the front of the pack. Now, let's both of us talk about the next one: best fans in Formula One. And I think this could be best fans driver based or best fans team based. What are your thoughts on that? Best fans for 2021.
Yeah, fans, that's a fun one because we got to see a lot of fun races, a lot of guys going to their home races, and that's always fun to see. I think we pointed out Checo Perez, his fans in Mexico. I thought that was a great one. So, I'd say the Mexican fans are definitely a nomination for me. There are a number of others. I think the Tifosi, of course, for Ferrari, they're always wild and rampant, and they love their team. And then, I know you have a couple of others, but I think naturally the British fans always show up for Hamilton and now Russell and Norris. We have a lot of good British drivers on the grid, and they love that and support them. So they're a lot of fun to watch too.
Yeah, so much of Formula One teams and media are British based, but we're now also seeing a lot of great British drivers. And think of just in 2022, Lewis, George, I think we include Albon in there, Lando. So that's pretty great. I think we saw a lot of Max fans show up, and not just at home race, but really on almost every track.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm going to go with Max fans, but I'd like to have you decide this one.
Yeah, the Orange Army is pretty amazing this year,
Very cool.
following, pretty much everywhere. And I think that definitely gave Verstappen and Red Bull a boost. You could tell when they showed up, like it was all hands on deck. They really got them going, which was cool to see. And then, the other one that we wanted to point out was 400,000 fans in Austin
Oh,
at the
yeah.
US Grand Prix. That was really cool to see. I think, Netflix, like you said earlier, has a big impact on that. But it's just nice to see a ton of fans showing up in the US for Formula One.
That is a good one because, we keep hearing, why can't Formula One get a bigger foothold in the US? But in 2022, we'll have two US races back in Austin and the inaugural Miami Grand Prix. But you're right. I think Austin, the US Grand Prix, had the most fans of any race this year. 400,000 over the weekend, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was very cool. But yeah, for the winner of this one, I think we have to go with the Orange Army. They were just crazy and fanatic and showed up every race to support Max. And, they helped push him over that championship line. So I think we have to give them, this win this year.
I'm with you. Imagine the Orange Army who were there at Abu Dhabi in that final lap, the final race, that miracle finish. That must have been something. But yeah, I agree. So I think we're both in agreement on best fans 2021, the Orange Army, Max Verstappen fans. How about you take this next one? The best surprise this past season.
Yeah, there were a number of fun, exciting surprises this season. For me, I think, we're still in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. And I think the number of races that were completed this season was fun and surprising. And, I really appreciated it. Then, we obviously had an incredible championship fight between Hamilton and Verstappen and Red Bull and Mercedes, which is always fun to see. It was surprising. I don't think either of us really expected there to be much fight, especially not in the second half of the season. So that was pretty cool to see. And then, naturally, we have Max Verstappen winning the Drivers' Championship, beating Lewis Hamilton, who has been just so dominant in this turbo hybrid era. The only time he has lost the championship was to his own teammate, Nico Rosberg, who subsequently retired. So it's pretty amazing to see Max win the drivers' championship and very surprising. For me, though, I think the best surprise has to be the championship fight, the battle between the two teams, Red Bull and Mercedes, and then the drivers' battle between Lewis and Max. I mean, just fun, exciting, surprising, dramatic. The whole season, it really, I think, captivated everyone and was, I think, good for the sport.
It was, no controversy here because I'm in total agreement with you. When the new engine rules didn't get implemented in 2021, I think we all just sort of assumed, well, once again, Mercedes with the dominant car will win start to finish. Lewis will be number one, Bottas number two, Max nipping at their heels. But right from the start, Red Bull and Max said, we came to fight. We think we have a car that can hang with Mercedes. And they delivered. Race in, race out. They never quit. Really, it was one of the best seasons in at least a generation. And even when Mercedes replaced Lewis's engine and it looked like, well, here we go, there's just nothing left, Max and Red Bull did not quit. And they did not quit at all. It went down to the very end. And what a shocking development. Red Bull driver championship, Max Verstappen world champion. That really was a big surprise. And even early on when Max was winning and we were all sort of shocked about that, how well the Red Bull was performing, there was still sort of those thoughts that maybe this would be like Ferrari with Vettel, where really doing everything he can, but over the course of that long season, that car just will not be able to keep pace with Mercedes. But Red Bull proved us wrong. Max proved us wrong. So I'm with you. That was the best surprise, was the championship battle. A legit championship battle with two teams.
Yep.
Now, the alternative. Biggest disappointment of the 2021 F1 season. I mean, for me, there are several. Honda exiting Formula One, that's such a huge disappointment, especially because it was the Honda engine for Red Bull. Now, I know Honda will be doing some behind the scenes work, but it's unfortunate. I wish they were staying in F1 fully and publicly the way they are in, say, Indy in the US. I think we all thought Aston Martin would really step up this year. And in fact, I think they fell backwards. Seb Vettel was another bit of a disappointment. I thought he drove well, but I think there's been a bit of a drop off in ability, in performance. Williams was another one. And then Bottas. We were just talking about the championship fight. Bottas also had a Mercedes, and his job is to get that thing into second place and to help out Lewis, and he failed. And he failed in what I think is legitimately the easiest assignment in Formula One, is take that Mercedes car and come in second place. But for me, I think the biggest disappointment was Daniel Ricciardo. He let Lando Norris, I think, over the course of the season, just really thoroughly trounce him. Now, admittedly, Daniel did get a win, but I think over the course of the year, the pace against Lando, what he could have done in that McLaren, I was just sort of very disappointed and surprised at sort of how little his impact was on Formula One in 2021. When you consider this is one of the best seasons I think we've had in a long time, Daniel Ricciardo was mostly a non-factor.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Like you said, a number of disappointments this season, but you look at the battle between McLaren and Ferrari, and if Ricciardo had stepped up a little bit more, that really could have been a lot closer, and they could have gotten that third spot. So, he's got to step up in 2022 and have a much better season, I think.
Yeah. So why don't you take this next one? Best season. So the 2021 season was one of the great ones, I think, in Formula One from start to finish. But who do you think had the best season? Now, this could be driver, it could be team, or anything else.
Yeah, there were lots of guys, lots of drivers, plenty of teams that had really solid seasons. We mentioned some of the guys that improved a lot. And I think, a number of those guys are probably on this list for having the best season. We think about guys like Sainz, Verstappen, naturally, even guys like Gasly or Ocon or Alonso. Those are all guys I think that had really great seasons, especially in terms of the cars that they were in. Sainz came in and outperformed Charles Leclerc, who, we all believe is a great driver in that Ferrari. And, Alonso coming back, returning to Formula One as a 40-year-old man and really giving it his all throughout the entire season and really being competitive in that Alpine. And then we talked about him a lot throughout the year, Pierre Gasly in that AlphaTauri. I mean, what an incredible job that he did this year. I think lots of people are surprised that he didn't get a seat in a better car for 2022, but if he drives, the same way in 2022, he's definitely going to get a spot on a better team, I think. But for me, you have to give the best season to Max Verstappen, winning the drivers' championship in the Red Bull, dethroning Lewis Hamilton. I mean, just an unbelievable job from him this season. He's a bright young driver. I can't imagine that this will be his only championship that he wins in his career. I mean, incredible season from him. I just feel like he has to get it for what he did.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on this one. It's amazing what Alonso is doing at age 40, one of the great pure drivers of all time. But what we saw from Max is, I think, at least a generational talent. I think he could reveal to us to be one of the greatest drivers of all time. We'll see that. But when I watched what Max Verstappen did and think that the cars in 2022 and going forward will be more equivalent, so it's less likely. So, for example, that Mercedes will have a dominant car. I think right now Max is head and shoulders above everyone else. And I agree with you, not only best season, but I also think it seems almost certain he'll win multiple championships. This next award, I think, is a slam dunk. Best rookie. There were a few rookies in Formula One this year, like Schumacher, Mazepin, Yuki. Yuki had a lot of hype, and he had a very good car, as Pierre Gasly proved, the AlphaTauri. But for me, I think this is a slam dunk award for Schumacher. His first season, I thought he drove well almost every race. I thought he did qualifying well almost every race in the worst car on the field. So I'm going to award this one to Mick Schumacher. But I did want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit tough ranking the two rookies in the Haas just because that car is so bad and neither one could get anywhere near the points. But Schumacher definitely outshone his teammate Mazepin, and Yuki in a pretty solid car in that AlphaTauri just was so far behind his teammate Gasly and had so many sort of crashes and just little mistakes that sort of tainted his season. I think giving best rookie of the 2021 Formula One season to Mick Schumacher is definitely appropriate.
Now, earlier we had best call. You thought best call, best decision of the year was Mercedes giving Lewis a new engine. Let's do the opposite of that. Biggest screw up of the year. There was that kind of odd 2 or 3 lap rain race. Michael Masi making several calls in the Abu Dhabi race. For example, not making Lewis give track position back, not legitimately, and then doing the sort of the odd cars being able to unlap themselves and then not, and then yes, sort of. Lewis was at Baku where he should have won, and I think he had a brake mistake. But I wanted to get you to sort of choose this award. Biggest screw up in Formula One in 2021.
Yeah, I don't know if we can call this an award, but we will be awarding it to somebody. Yeah, so I think those are all legitimate. I think in Belgium that weird rainy race to get half points just sucked. I don't know what would have been better in that situation. I mean, it was undrivable, so what can you do? But yeah, it didn't go well.
I told you, George Russell made a deal with the devil. So he is a Formula One driver, but it just seems like, everything goes wrong for him when it absolutely should be perfect.
Yeah. Well, he got on the podium
He
there,
did in
so,
that sort of odd race of a handful of laps in the rain with half points. He did get on the podium.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Masi throughout, he had some difficult decisions to make. I think he was probably 50-50 in my eyes and probably in most people's eyes. He was about 50-50 good and not so good decisions. I think Charles Leclerc in Monaco, he was on pole and then crashed during qualifying and ended up not being able to start the race, which has to be so disappointing for, a native, that's his home race.
Right.
And for Ferrari, on pole and then you can't even start. That's just so disappointing.
Yeah.
But I think you mentioned it already. The biggest screw up this season for me is Lewis Hamilton in Baku, Azerbaijan. Max Verstappen had a tire failure, was out of the race, and his teammate was up in first, I think, at that point. And Lewis tried on the restart to go around him on the inside, locked up, and went straight through the corner and ended up not getting any points from that race. If he was just a little bit more patient, I think he absolutely would have taken Perez. But, that is how racing goes sometimes. And for me, that's the biggest screw up this season.
Wow. That certainly is a deserving award, as we're going to call this. And you're right. Had Lewis not done an almost inexplicable screw up, he could have taken points. He could have been well into the points. He would have been world champion, I think. But I'm still going to go with, if this were my award to hand out, it would be the Ferrari team, Leclerc, as part of that in Monaco. I mean, you have the historic Monaco race, the historic Ferrari team. Charles is a Montesquieu. He had pole. And as they say, it's such a difficult race to overtake. And he doesn't even start. He doesn't really even participate in that race. To me, that was the biggest screw up. But you get to award this. So it is going to Lewis Hamilton, which is a bit of a shock because, I think Alonso, Max, I think they've got more pure talent than Lewis. But Lewis, when you combine his talent, his fierce competitiveness, but also just his lack of mistakes, that is a deadly trio. And that was such a huge mistake. So it's a bit shocking. So biggest screw up. We'll hand that one to Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, Lewis, very, very rarely does he slip up. But I think for me, just the implications of that mistake down the line is what brought me to give him the award.
Right. Okay. Now, the final batch of awards. These are the big ones. I'll go with this first one. Teammate of the Year. So, this is a good one, I think, because, I think back, Alonso helping out Ocon, Bottas doing his regular job of sort of protecting Lewis and getting Mercedes into the points so they can get the constructors year after year. But for me, it has to be Checo Perez. And I know so much of this comes down to that final race that decided the championship. But, Max is a shark. I don't even think he means to devour his teammates, but he does. Albon, Gasly, Riccardo. Checo came in there. He was always a mid-pack driver, but Max didn't intimidate him, didn't get him off his game. Checo stayed, his sort of level-headed best throughout the season. I think he could have performed better, but he did a very good job in his first year for Red Bull. And a lot of his efforts in slowing Lewis down in that final race, I think that helped garner Max the championship. So for me, I'm going to award Teammate of the Year to Sergio Perez.
Wow. That's worthy, for sure. That's shocking though, I think,
Do
for
you?
me.
So who do you think should get that?
Well, I think as far as teammates go, probably Alonso would have to get it for me for just what he did for Ocon. I mean, basically, he allowed Ocon to win a race, which is pretty remarkable. And for me, that just automatically gives him teammate of the year. I think for the two championship, contenders, their teammates, although they, helped them out kind of sometimes, generally, I think it came down to both of those drivers, Verstappen and Hamilton, duking it out rather than being helped by their teammate. So I would have to give it to Alonso for allowing Ocon to win a race this season.
I think that's a worthy pick. And I think, I don't know if it's turning 40, if it's being out of F1 for a couple years, but watching Alonso help his teammate get a win was pretty remarkable. I also think, there's always the drama with the Ferrari team. And here they bring in a new driver, Carlos Sainz, who kept up with Charles Leclerc. And there was almost no drama. Lando and Riccardo seem to get along very well. George and Latifi, I think, were good teammates and always did whatever they could to help the other. So I think there were a lot of worthy nominees, but because I think he was able to not get devoured by Max and actually help him out, I'm still going to go with Sergio.
Yeah.
So, related, team of the year. Who do you select for team of the year?
Ooh, that's a good one. We had plenty of good teams this year. You think about the big two, Red Bull and Mercedes, definitely both worthy of winning this award. There are a couple of others that I can mention. I think McLaren, we like to talk about just to see them sort of rise from the ashes of a few years ago and really be competitive and strong. And I think throughout the year, put in some great performances. The only team this year that had a 1-2 finish, I think certainly in my eyes are worthy of this award as well. And then I think sort of a surprise team this year was Alpine. They, among that mid pack, were just better than everybody else, which I think was surprising. And both Alonso and Ocon did really, really well this year. So this for me is kind of a tough pick because I think there are several teams that are very deserving. But I think that I am going to give it to McLaren. Maybe that's a bit shocking, but I think having that 1-2 finish, Lando Norris just driving so well, and to see how far they've come in the last couple of seasons, I think they, for me, deserve this award.
Yeah, I won't argue with that one. Shockingly, the only team, as you said, to get 1 and 2 this year in the 2021 season. Lando and Riccardo both seem to get along great. Zach Brown is getting them up to be, competitive. As you noted, it's just, 3-4 years ago, McLaren was woeful. They were like Haas. And, it's hard for us to imagine Haas competing for third in the constructors, for example, in 3 years. So, yeah, I'm going to go with you on that one. I think McLaren, team of the year. Race of the year. I think we'll have to debate this one. I'm going to select the winner, but I definitely want to get your thoughts because there were several great races. The final race, Abu Dhabi, there was controversy from the very first lap, on the first lap and the last lap. There was Belgium, that sort of odd rain race. I certainly don't want to call that race of the year, though. For me, I'm going to go with Azerbaijan. I always love that track. I love that setting. That one had so much drama. I believe, that was the one where we thought Max would win it. Tire goes. Lewis makes mistakes. So for me, I'm going to go with Azerbaijan.
Nice. That's a good one that I don't know if I had really thought about, but I like that one. I think there's others that you can look at. I think, was it Italy? Italy was one where, there was just so much drama and craziness. And I think Hamilton and Verstappen came together, I believe, in that race and took each other out. So that was a lot of fun for everybody other than those two.
Right. And I think that was Riccardo's win, right?
Right. Yes, that was the one too. McLaren one too. Hungary, Ocon's race where he won, great race. And then, for me, I'm a sucker for Monaco. Maybe it wasn't a great race. It's kind of hard at this point with the cars being so wide. It's hard to overtake on that track, but just Monaco and coming back to Monaco, we didn't get it in 2020. That for me is always a joy to watch. So, those would be my other nominations, but I think Baku is definitely a good one to win this award.
Yeah, Baku's always just so much fun. I always love Baku. I love that track. I love the setting. I love that Formula One goes there every year. And there's always some sort of drama, some mistake, some screw up. So I'm going to go with that one. Now, the final two awards of the year. These are the big ones. Who are you awarding Drive of the Year to?
Oh, drive of the year. That is, definitely a good one. I think there's plenty of guys. I think when you think about drives of the year, you have to think about sort of the unforeseen winners and then just some really exceptional drives from Hamilton. We kind of already mentioned Hamilton in Brazil, where he basically came from the back of the pack in the sprint race and ended up winning the race on Sunday, thoroughly just dominating everybody, including Max Verstappen, to get him back in that championship fight. I think that's, one of the most dominant performances that we saw this year. That said, I think that I have to give this award to Esteban Ocon for his win in Hungary. I mean, I love a good underdog story. And somehow, he found his way through chaos a couple of times this season to get up into the podium spots. And in Hungary, he was able to defend from four-time world champion Seb Vettel, and he got plenty of help from his teammate Alonso holding up Hamilton for long enough so that Esteban could end up winning that race. I mean, just sort of an outrageous overall race, but a great drive from Ocon. I love to see a Frenchman up there. So, that was fun. And I think definitely deserving of drive of the year.
Yeah, it's funny because so you mentioned Lewis. I think that was Brazil where he came from the back, right? And it
Yeah.
was amazing to watch, but his car was so dominant that I set that nomination aside, unfairly or not. But it was just amazing to watch. But it's funny you have Ocon with Drive of the Year because for me, I actually would have made it Alonso because it was Alonso who just sort of almost, I mean, it was just unfathomable the way in that Alpine he held off Lewis lap after lap after lap. Lewis was doing everything. Lewis was going out of his mind because he just could not get past Alonso. And so seeing these two world champions just give everything they had for lap after lap after lap, and with Alonso in a lesser car holding Hamilton off, and that I think it's safe to say directly contributed to Ocon getting the race. I would have made it Alonso in Drive of the Year for the same race. But Ocon, you're right. I mean, he was the one who got on the podium. He was the victor. He held off Vettel and everyone else. He drove through all the craziness. So definitely a worthy award winner. So why don't you take this last one? Driver of the Year.
Yeah, this is a little bit similar to the best season award that we gave out earlier. So, some similar nominees. I think Hamilton, of course, is going to be up there. He was incredible throughout the entire season, never gave up. He's a 7-time world champion. It's not like he needs another one, but, he has that sort of Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan mentality where, every time he gets in the car, he's going to do everything that he can to win the race. And, we saw that throughout the season. I think naturally you have to think about Max Verstappen. I would say Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz are both up there for driver of the year. But, again, I think this is a tough one. For me, I'm going to have to give driver of the year to Max Verstappen, winning his first world championship title, out racing potentially the greatest driver of all time in Lewis Hamilton in what is basically the best car ever in Mercedes. I mean, he got an ounce of luck at the end of the season, right at the very end of the final race to win. But I mean, to even be in that position was just incredible from him this year. I have to give him driver of the year, Max Verstappen.
Yeah, definitely a worthy award winner for driver of the year. We had an earlier award, best season, which incorporates a lot of elements, not just driving, and could include teams. But this one, driver of the year, when you just focus on the driving. Lewis, I mean, we mentioned him in Brazil. We mentioned him for the full season. Carlos coming in his first year in Ferrari, that's always just a difficult task, and he did a great job. Lando really stepping up this year. Pierre Gasly in a middling car, just showing once again why he deserves to be in a much better car. Alonso coming back and racing lights out. Those were all great stories, all great drivers. But I'm with you. Max Verstappen, driver of the year, going up against Lewis, going up against Mercedes. It seemed impossible when the year started and seemed inevitable by the middle of the year, then seemed once again impossible a few laps into Abu Dhabi. It was, you know what, Lewis is great and his car is just simply too good. There's no possible way. But Max never quit. He got some luck and he won the race, won the championship. So that's a great one. Driver of the year, Max Verstappen. Son, this was a good one. This was a great episode. Love doing our award ceremonies every year. Looking forward to this for the 2022 season, which I hope is as good as 2021. It will need to be sort of the Empire Strikes Back level of drama to equal 2021. And I am looking forward to the Empire being Mercedes striking back. But who knows how this will play out. But I love doing the awards show. And I think everyone deserved the award they got. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to the world's most beloved father and son Formula One podcast. I hope you enjoyed our first Formula One's award show. And we are lights out.
See ya. Thanks for listening.